Hi, I'm Kevin Kilbane. I'm joined by Steven Caldwell. Stevie, ahead of this game against Suriname tonight at BMO Field in Toronto, it's going to be an interesting one, Stevie. I know you watched the game very closely on Friday. It was, wasn't it, the first leg of this tie? And given something that we spoke about in the past about the real significant games that Canada have got ahead of 2026, how significant would it be for Canada to qualify through this tie and get to the semi-final of the Nations League?
I think it's enormous, Kevin. I think given the fact that Canada couldn't do that in the last Nations League semi-finals and didn't get the high-profile games, it's essential that they do it this time, that they see this job out. It was a bitterly disappointing loss against Jamaica where Canada were in a promising position, much like this, and then let it slip away and obviously went out on away goals. So they've got to make sure that doesn't happen this time, that they stay concentrated and that they get the job done against a lesser opponent. It has to be said, Jamaica were a much better team than Suriname, and Canada have got to keep full concentration and start this game properly. And I think if they do that, Kev, and they get a couple of goals and the crowd settles into this, I think Canada can go on and win this 3 or 4. But as we've seen in the past, none of these games are easy, so they've got to remain concentrated, don't they? And they have to make sure that they play to the best of their ability, they get the early goal and they settle everyone down and they go and they complete the job.
Yeah, when it comes to the importance of the game tonight, Stevie, I'm not really looking for Canada to go and say we're going to go and score 4 and 5 goals. In an ideal world, yes, that would be great, and I think it's something that we would all strive for and we would want when we're watching the team, Stevie. But I think I want to see a controlled display from Canada. I want to see a total domination in terms of defensively sound, get everything right from the organisational point of view, controlling possession of the football, and then when you get into key positions in the final third of the field, you can allow your players to be expressive and creative. That's what pretty much I'm looking for. It's not necessarily for me about going and getting the goals to show you total dominance of the game. That is the one area I think where Canada have failed. If we're going back to even the friendly game against Panama at BMO last month, Stevie, where Canada didn't really control the game, didn't really control the football for long periods of the match. They looked a little bit sluggish, I would feel, maybe in the final third when it comes to the attacking side of the game, and they looked a little bit vulnerable defensively apart from Moise Bombito in that game. So yes, we're all looking for goals. We're all looking for a dominant display. But I think it's about, yes, building towards 2026, but showing a controlled performance and a more controlled performance than we've probably seen against a side like Suriname in the past.
Yeah, I would say controlled and ruthless, Kev. As we know at international football, you don't get 10, 15 chances, do you? You get 7 or 8 chances if you're playing really well. And can Canada capitalise on that? Can they be ruthless? Because that's a question mark we've had over them as well. That they've got into some great positions in the last 5, 6, 7 games, and they've maybe been a little bit wasteful. We saw that again in Suriname, where Tani Olawashe particularly missed a couple of chances that's got to be scored at the international level, has to be put in the back of the net. So I agree with you, controlled and then ruthless when they get in a position and dominate an opponent that they should dominate. We don't want to see a performance that's laboured, that's a little bit lacklustre, that's
Mm.
maybe breaking down in certain areas. The game plan that Jesse Marsh is going to go out with, we're pretty sure it's going to be the usual high octane, get it forward, get it down the sides, try and create turnovers and create pressure for Suriname. That's going to be the game plan. Can they deliver on that as well as they can or as close to perfection as possible and then be ruthless when they're in the areas? And if they do these things, if they play 80%, 90%, they're going to comfortably take care of
Mm.
Suriname tonight. And I'm sure, it'll be a great night for the fans and a great night for the Canadian men's national team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Stevie? We've spoken so often about the collective with Canada. It's got to be about the collective, essentially, about 1 to 11, 1 to 15, 16 players and how they approach the game. But the individual players that we've spoken so often about in the past and the key players within the system that Jesse Marsh or John Herdman or whoever it would be that's the coach that's taken over this side, I've spoken probably openly about maybe Stefan Estacio being probably the most important player over the last 2 or 3 years to Canada and how they're going to succeed. Many might have an argument that it could be Alfonso Davies. But I think maybe in the last few months, not necessarily in terms of the goals that he's been scoring, although he has scored one or two big ones, but his overall play. Do you think Jonathan David now has become the talisman, the main guy for Canada? Do you think he's the most important player now for Canada in terms of how they're going to dictate play without the ball and how they're going to dictate play with the ball?
Undoubtedly, Kevin. For me, he's absolutely the most important player. He's a player who is vital. He links the play. He's the man who has the key pass. He's the player who puts the ball in the back of the net. And at this level, goals are absolutely vital. And Jonathan David provides that. He's the composure when it matters. We've given him a little bit of criticism in the past because we feel like he can do even more. But I think he's grown more and more into the shot, more and more into the leadership role, and more into international football, that he's becoming absolutely vital. And he's there every single game. He's playing every single minute. He's always on the field. He's in great club form. I think he's the key player, and very interested that Jesse Marsh has given him this newer role where he's allowed to drift around. He's allowed to go pick up the ball in deeper areas. He's not necessarily always in that number 9 position. He wants to make Jonathan David that playmaker somewhat, that attacking playmaker who's free to go wide and to go into number 10 spots, to get on the ball, to make things happen. So I think that shows the confidence that Jesse Marsh has in him, the belief that he has that he is probably the outstanding attacking player within this group. And he's certainly relishing that and taking that on to a great extent. For me, he's the most important player, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think maybe naively from my own point of view, Stevie, I've judged him a lot on maybe the goals being scored in the team. But I've lent quite heavily on you over the last couple of years, having worked with him, and you've maybe explained to me in great detail about his importance when they don't have the ball and how clever he is in how he's arcing his run towards the opposition and closing down, forcing opposition into certain areas so Canada can win the ball, and then all of a sudden he comes alive and he's in a position then to strike or even then be creative from the other side of it. And I think that's been the interesting thing from Jonathan David, where we have seen the overall development of his game, Stevie. Particularly, I feel under Jesse Marsh, as you say, in giving him a bit of a freer role, where he is dropping into midfield a little bit more, where he is being a little bit more creative. We might even see him in wider areas at times as well, not just playing as a 9 that we've all probably become accustomed to him playing right through the middle as a 9. His overall game is absolutely developing. And as I said before, Stevie, I've lent quite heavily on you, having worked with him in his real strengths, not just in terms of the goals that he scores for the side.
He's so smart, Kev. He is so intelligent. The type of player that he is, the way that he thinks about the game is on another level. It's world class, and it's very interesting this week. Jesse Marsh been saying that he's the smartest player that he's ever worked with. I mean, we know some of the players that Jesse Marsh has worked with throughout his career in Europe, particularly. So that is high praise. But I feel the same having worked with him. I understand that his ability to cut off lines into number 6s to allow an opposition to create attacks is truly outstanding. But his awareness of where space is, his timing of runs, his timing runs into the box, his weight of pass, this guy's got the complete game, and it's been a little bit slow the way that this has developed. I think he's a little bit introverted at times, Jonathan David, but I'm starting to see a player who's growing into his shot at club level. He's on the verge of a big move. He's one of the main men, of course, with his national team. I'm starting to see a guy that's getting to that, the ripe age of his career, the prime of his career, where he's really just grown into the position, Kev. And we're seeing every facet of this lad's game now, aren't we? We're starting to see every single aspect of it. And we need it to continue. He's got to keep getting better if Canada are going to be as successful as we hope they are in the next couple of years. But I like where he's going, and tonight's another big step for him on that journey.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him tonight, Stevie, to see how the team does progress. Can they get through? I'm sure that it's going to be a positive night for Canada, but we'll see at BMO Field this evening.